Good morning, my name is Graham Gordon Thomas, and I would like to talk about science, our imagination, and megaliths. You see, something has happened in my lifetime, nearly 70, and in science. Science used to be fascinating. It used to be exciting. It used to be always announcing something new and a new discovery. Now, unfortunately, for reasons I will not go into, but I understand, science has become a very strict orthodoxy. It dare not imagine past the little box it fixed itself into. And it says, or the scientists say, and orthodox archaeologists say, all of you out there, outside the confines of our little box, are not allowed to have thoughts of your own. We own the knowledge. That's what they're saying. The people in Cambridge, and it doesn't matter which subject, whether it's cosmology or whatever it is, they're saying they are the owners of the knowledge on all the subjects, which is absolute claptrap, and it's not science. That is a religious view, and it's reminiscent of a pre-Reformation mentality. If you've followed science all your life, which I have, and been involved in scientific experiments myself, using evolutionary theory to try to understand how to create accelerated learning for a year in China, so I've done scientific experiments to prove a theory, and that's what science is, proving a theory. If you can't prove your theory, your science is just philosophy. Even if it's mathematical, it's just philosophy in maths. Maths prove nothing. Only time the maths that cosmologists use prove the maths, the precepts they have. They base their maths on. They create a formula to suit the precepts, the ideas, the principles, and from that you work out and extrapolate through maths. That says, well, we've got this result because the maths show it, but it's philosophy in maths. It's not something you can use. Some of it you can use practically, like they have with quantum theory. They use it practically now with communications, but nonetheless, we cannot say the Big Bang was the way the universe started. I argue there's lots of Big Bangs. The point about that is, you cannot put a limit on human imagination. When it comes to the stones, and this is the important bit, as a mason, I find it very difficult that some people were better than me at masonry. And that's the thing what grates you, because as a mason, we have a pride in what we do. We want to think, well, we're going to be as good as we can in our job. We want to be able to master the stones, shape the stones, see the shape in the stones. Then you cut the shape out of the stones. That's how you do a sculpture. You see the shape in it and you cut it out of it. You see the shape, shade a bit off, you cut it out. The frustrating part about Pluma Punker and all the other megaliths around the world is that whatever imagination you have into how they shape the stones, they defeat you. And how you move the stones, those masons who built megaliths, whoever they were, if masons is the right word for them, advanced technologists, amazing minds, our imaginations come to a sort of a vacuum, a place where we can enter, but we're not quite sure. We have to imagine how they shape the stones and move the stones. We have to imagine. We're left to our imagination. But the point is, we can imagine that this is where science it stops, and those of us who are free, not in orthodoxy, are free to imagine. We're not stuck in Cambridge or one of these classes where you all nod like dogs to the professor so to get a degree in nodding dog degrees. A lot of degrees these days are nodding dog degrees. They're not actually, there's advances in technology, but technology evolves itself. Humans don't evolve technology. Technology uses humans to evolve, but that's a different way of looking at it. But when it comes to the stones, shaping the stones in the megaliths, all we can do is imagine. If we can't cut them in our traditional methods, and it's not long, we haven't had diamond saws for very long. I don't know when they were invented, but when they invented electricity, they invented diamond saws. You've still got to have the tungsten steel, hardened steel, to make a diamond saw, which doesn't melt. When you cut a stone with, and I've cut thousands of stones or materials with diamond saws, so I'm an authority on that. More of an authority on cutting things with stones than any archaeologist. And then I challenged them to challenge me on that and debate it with me, how they cut the stones. Point is, they won't, because they lose the debate. Because we have to imagine, how did they cut the stones? I'm not talking about all the millions of blocks in the pyramids, because they're pretty orthodox cutting. That's pretty, if it's limestone, it's pretty well orthodox, and it splits, and you have to split it because of its matrix or crystal formation. You learn how to split that. That's no great mystery. But when they're highly polished stones, what they've moved 70 tons of material and carved out a rectangular piece out of the middle, how on earth did they get underneath? When you take a pie shape out in Peru near Cusco, you take a pie shape out of a rock, piece of stone, and it's flat underneath perfectly. How did you do that? Wow, how did they do that? We can only use our imagination to explain it to us how they did it. And this is the thing, I think we can work out how I actually think if we can imagine it. Well, I know if someone imagined the rocket to the moon, they made one. Someone imagined the motor car, they made one. Someone imagined the TV, they made one. Someone imagined a computer, they made one. Someone imagined a brick and fired it, they made one. And then it becomes repetitious. So if we can imagine that you can use harmonics and frequency to mold stone and shape stone, then we can build that machine. It might take 10 years of experiments in a lab to make a harmonic resonance machine, if you like, call it what you like, but eventually, given a chance to experiment, there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that any of us who have the imagination to imagine a machine that can float rocks, that can levitate them, any of us, given the time, will make something that can do that. It's only a matter of tuning in, getting the first hint or glint through experiments of what is possible, and then going from there, because that's how all experiments are done. But science now either is keeping a secret how the stones were shaped, which I believe they're keeping a secret. I think they know how the stones were shaped. That's why this categorical denial is because they possibly, someone knows. That is my suspicion. But to say that Masons don't know more than archaeologists about cutting stones, well, it simply doesn't make sense. It means the archaeologists, or the so-called, it's not actually a science because you can't prove it. It's got no practical use otherwise, other than making interesting documentaries. That's all it is. It's an interest. It's not really necessary, but it is a fascination. Humans love fascinations. But to say they know is foolish, because they don't. And say other people who are not experts like them can't know is also equally foolish and totally unscientific. The point is, anyone can be a scientist. It is not some person in a lab with a white coat on. It's anyone who has a theory who can then go on and with practice prove that theory. That is a scientist, and that comes to anyone. So science is random. It's not in a box like in Cambridge or wherever they are. It's not in a lab. It's nowhere, and it's everywhere at once. It's random. Political correctness has taken over this world for quite some time, and then it's now dominating the Western world and holding the Western world back, while places like China are racing ahead. And you have to say why. Why is that so? I spent a year in China in a university observing how students are really challenged there, and we see students here daren't even ask a question in the West. Without being castigated, you won't get a degree if you ask a question. Just tick the boxes, you've got a degree. That's not even Greek philosophy, is it? Anyway, I just put that thought in. When it comes to cutting the stones, if masons can't imagine how it's done, archaeologists can't imagine how it's done, and that's for sure. And the thing is, I correct that and say, we have to then say, well, we have to imagine how it's done, and if we can imagine how it's done, then we can create the means to do it. Because that's how humans have evolved from the very start to become a civilized creature, by imagining how things can be done. And it doesn't matter, you can say humans were created by aliens, but you still go back. No one spontaneously become a genius what can make things what can go from star to star. No one. Everything starts from a beginning and develops itself to a point where it can recognize itself and go on from there. Whatever your theory about human development is, there's always the other question, where did they evolve from? Well, maybe we can answer that one as well. But thank you. Anyway, my name's Graham Gordon Thomas. Just putting another thought why archaeologists know nothing when it comes to cutting stones. Masons know everything. It's that simple. So science, in other words, is knocked on the head for orthodoxy. And it's a very sad, I think it's a very sad day for science in the West when that happens. Thank you.